I've always been a skeptic when it comes to the supernatural. Ghost stories, urban legends, things that go bump in the night, I chalked it all up to overactive imaginations and the human tendency to see patterns where none exist. That was until last summer, when I experienced something that shattered my perception of reality and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about the world. It started innocently enough. I had just moved into a new apartment in an old Victorian house that had been converted into several units. The place had character, with high ceilings, ornate moldings, and large bay windows that let in plenty of natural light. It was a steal for the price, and I couldn't believe my luck. The first few weeks were uneventful. I settled into my new home, arranged my furniture, and started to feel comfortable in the space. But then, little things began to catch my attention. Objects I was sure I had left in one place would turn up in another. I'd hear faint whispers coming from empty rooms, only to find nothing when I investigated. At first, I dismissed these occurrences as the product of stress and adjusting to a new environment. One night, about a month after I moved in, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom. Thinking it might be one of my neighbors coming home late, I tried to go back to sleep. But the footsteps didn't fade away. Instead, they seemed to pace back and forth, with a slow, deliberate rhythm that made my skin crawl. I lay there, frozen in my bed, as the footsteps continued. They never entered my apartment, but they never left the hallway either. After what felt like hours, I finally gathered the courage to get up and look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. As soon as I stepped away from the door, the footsteps resumed. This time, they were accompanied by a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my bed, lights on, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house. The next morning, I convinced myself it had all been a vivid nightmare. But as the days passed, more inexplicable things began to happen. The television would turn on by itself, always to static. I'd find scratches on the inside of my closet door, as if something had been trying to claw its way out. And sometimes, just at the edge of my vision, I'd catch glimpses of a dark, shadowy figure that would vanish the moment I turned to look at it directly. I tried to rationalize it all. Old houses make strange noises. My eyes were playing tricks on me. I was working too hard and not getting enough sleep. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. About 2 months after I moved in, I decided to do some research on the history of the house. What I found chilled me to the bone. The property had a dark past, filled with tragedy and unexplained deaths. The original owner, a wealthy businessman, had gone mad and murdered his entire family before taking his own life. Since then, the house had changed hands numerous times, with each new owner reporting strange occurrences before fleeing. Armed with this knowledge, I knew I should leave. But something kept me there. A morbid curiosity, perhaps, or a stubborn refusal to let fear drive me from my home. Whatever the reason, I stayed. One night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a child's voice coming from the living room. "Mommy?" it called. "Mommy, where are you?" My blood ran cold. I lived alone, and there were no children in the building. Slowly, I got out of bed and crept towards the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the curtains. At first, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. Then, in the corner by the window, I spotted a small figure. It was a little girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old. She wore an old-fashioned nightgown, and her long, dark hair obscured her face. She stood with her back to me, her shoulders shaking as if she were crying. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you lost?" The girl slowly turned to face me. As she did, I felt the air in the room grow ice cold. Where her face should have been, there was only a swirling black void, like a miniature black hole had replaced her features. I screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet and falling to the floor. The girl, or whatever it was, began to move towards me, its movements jerky and unnatural, like a marionette controlled by an inexperienced puppeteer. "Mommy," it said again, its voice distorting into something inhuman. "Why did you let them hurt me, Mommy?" I scrambled to my feet and ran back to my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I could hear it coming closer, its footsteps light but unmistakable on the hardwood floor. "Let me in, Mommy," it called through the door. "I'm so cold. So hungry." I pressed my back against the door, my mind racing. This couldn't be real. It had to be a nightmare, a hallucination, anything but reality. The temperature in the room plummeted. I could see my breath misting in the air. Frost began to form on the windows, creeping across the glass in intricate patterns. And then, impossibly, a small hand began to push through the solid wood of the door. It was followed by an arm, then a shoulder. The creature was phasing through the door as if it were made of smoke. I closed my eyes, certain that this was the end. But instead of the cold touch I expected, I felt a warm hand on my shoulder. "Hey, are you okay?" I opened my eyes to find myself sitting on the floor of the hallway outside my apartment. My neighbor, a kind-faced older woman named Mrs. Chin, was looking down at me with concern. "I heard screaming," she said. "I found you out here, thrashing around like you were having a fit." I looked around, disoriented. The hallway was bright and normal. There was no sign of the girl, no frost, no otherworldly chill in the air. I don't know what happened," I stammered. "I must have been sleepwalking." Mrs. Chin helped me to my feet. "You poor thing," she said. "You look like you've seen a ghost." As she spoke those words, I caught a glimpse of movement behind her. There, at the end of the hallway, stood the girl. She raised a finger to where her lips should have been, in a shushing motion. Then, she faded away like mist in the morning sun. "Maybe I have," I whispered. From that night on, the occurrences became more frequent and more intense. Objects would fly across rooms of their own accord. I'd wake up with unexplained bruises and scratches. The walls would bleed a thick, black substance that vanished without a trace when I tried to clean it. I tried to leave, but every time I packed my bags, something would stop me. My car wouldn't start. I'd suddenly fall ill. Or I'd find myself unable to remember why I wanted to leave in the first place. It was as if the house or whatever resided within it had claimed me. And it wasn't going to let me go. Weeks turned into months. I lost my job, my friends stopped calling, and I became a prisoner in my own home. The boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred until I couldn't tell what was real anymore. And through it all, the girl would appear. Sometimes as a malevolent presence, sometimes as a lost, frightened child. She would whisper things to me in the dark, terrible secrets about the house and its past. About the family that had died here, and the countless others who had suffered within these walls. I began to understand that she wasn't the only spirit trapped here. The house was a nexus, a focal point for supernatural energies that had accumulated over decades of tragedy and pain. And now, I was a part of it too. One night, as I sat in the living room, staring blankly at the static-filled TV screen, I heard a new voice. It was deep and resonant, nothing like the girl's childish whisper. "You're ready now," it said. I turned to find a tall, shadowy figure standing in the corner. Its edges were blurry, as if it wasn't fully present in this reality. "Ready for what?" I asked, surprised by how calm I felt. "To see the truth," the figure replied. "To understand what this place really is." It extended a hand towards me. I knew I should be terrified, but after everything I had experienced, I felt only a grim curiosity. As I reached out to take its hand, the room around me began to warp and shift. The walls melted away, revealing a vast, impossible space beyond. I saw other versions of the house, stacked on top of each other like a twisted M.C. Escher painting. In each one, I could see other people, other versions of myself, trapped in their own nightmares. "What is this?" I gasped. "The true nature of reality," the figure said. "This house exists in many dimensions, many timelines. It feeds on fear, on suffering. And you, my dear, have been chosen to become its new caretaker." I wanted to refuse, to run away, but I knew there was no escaping this. I had become as much a part of the house as the spirits that haunted it. As this realization washed over me, I felt something fundamental shift within my being. My perception expanded, and suddenly, I could see and hear everything happening in every version of the house across all dimensions. I saw myself, countless versions of myself, each trapped in their own unique horror. And I understood that my story was just one of many, an endless cycle of terror and revelation that had been playing out for eternity. The shadowy figure began to fade away, its purpose fulfilled. But before it disappeared completely, it left me with one final, chilling message: "Welcome home. Your work begins now." And so, I find myself here, writing this account of my experiences. I don't know if anyone will ever read these words, or if they'll simply become another story lost in the infinite layers of this reality. But if you do read this, if you've experienced something similar, or if you're considering moving into an old house with a suspiciously low rent, remember my tale. Because the true horror isn't in the ghosts or the supernatural phenomena. The true horror is in a realization that reality is far more vast and terrifying than we can possibly imagine. And sometimes, when we peer into the darkness, we become a part of it. As I sit here, watching the cursor blink on my screen, I can feel the house shifting around me. New stories are beginning, new nightmares unfolding. And I, the unwilling caretaker of this nexus of horror, must bear witness to them all. The girl appears beside me, her void face turning towards the computer screen. "Are you ready for the next chapter?" she asks, her voice a mixture of innocence and malevolence. I nod, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I'm ready," I reply, knowing that this is only the beginning of an eternal narrative of fear. And somewhere, in another dimension, another version of me is just moving into this house, unaware of the horrors that await. The cycle continues, endless and unbroken. The true unsettling horror story, it turns out, is the one we're all living in. We just don't realize it until it's too late. As I sit here, the eternal caretaker of this nexus of horrors, I feel the weight of countless realities pressing down on me. The house shifts and groans around me, a living entity feeding on the fear and suffering of its inhabitants across dimensions. But little did I know, my role in this cosmic horror was about to evolve into something far more terrifying. Days, weeks, perhaps even years pass. Time loses all meaning in this place. I watch as versions of myself in other dimensions fall prey to the house's malevolence. Some go mad, some take their own lives, others simply vanish into the ether. And with each lost soul, I feel my own consciousness expanding, absorbing their experiences, their terror. One day, or night, it's impossible to tell anymore, I notice something different. The girl with the void face appears, but this time, she's not alone. Behind her stands a procession of shadowy figures, each one a distorted reflection of myself from different timelines. "It's time," the girl says, her voice echoing with the weight of 1,000 whispers. "The convergence is upon us." Before I can ask what she means, the room begins to warp and twist. The walls peel away like old wallpaper, revealing a vast, cosmic expanse beyond. Stars and galaxies swirl in impossible patterns, and in the center of it all, I see the house, or rather, infinite versions of the house, all occupying the same space simultaneously. My consciousness is suddenly thrust into this maelstrom of realities. I experience 1,000 lives at once, each one a variation on my own story. In one, I'm a Victorian-era nobleman driven to madness by the house's whispers. In another, I'm a futuristic AI trapped in a virtual simulation of the cursed dwelling. The experiences flood my mind, threatening to drown my sense of self in an ocean of alternate identities. Just when I think I can't take anymore, everything stops. I find myself standing in a vast, circular room. The walls are lined with mirrors, each one showing a different version of myself. At the center of the room is an ancient, gnarled tree, its branches reaching towards a ceiling that seems to stretch into infinity. The girl with the void face stands beside the tree, but now I can see her true form. She's not a child at all, but an eldritch being of immense power, her form constantly shifting and changing, impossible to comprehend fully. "You've done well," she says, her voice now a chorus of 1,000,000 souls. "You've witnessed the truth of our existence, the infinite branches of reality all stemming from this one nexus point." I try to speak, but find I no longer have a physical form. I'm a consciousness suspended in this impossible space, aware of every version of myself across all dimensions. But why? I manage to ask, my thoughts echoing in the vast chamber. Why me? Why any of this? The being laughs, a sound that sends ripples through the fabric of reality itself. Why not you? In an infinite multiverse, every possibility must occur. You are both special and utterly insignificant, a paradox that fuels the very engine of existence. As she speaks, I become aware of a growing darkness at the edges of my perception. Something vast and ancient is stirring, awakened by the convergence of so many realities. What's happening? I ask, fear gripping my formless being. The eldritch girl smiles, her face a swirling vortex of cosmic horror. The old ones are awakening. The barriers between dimensions have grown thin, and they hunger for new realms to consume. The darkness grows, tendrils of void seeping into the mirrored room. Each reflection of myself begins to distort and twist, their faces contorting in silent screams of agony. "You must make a choice," the girl says, her form beginning to fade as the darkness encroaches. "Embrace your role as the Nexus Guardian and fight to maintain the barriers between worlds, or surrender to the chaos and let reality unravel." The choice seems impossible. How can I, a mere mortal who stumbled into this cosmic horror, hope to stand against entities that defy comprehension? But as I watch my alternate selves succumb to the encroaching void, I feel a surge of defiance. I may be insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but I'm also the focal point of this convergence. Perhaps that gives me power I don't yet understand. I'll fight, I declare, my voice resonating with newfound strength. I'll protect the boundaries of reality. The moment the words leave my non-existent mouth, I feel a surge of energy coursing through my being. The mirrors around the room shatter, and I absorb the essence of every version of myself. Memories, experiences, knowledge from countless lifetimes flood into me. The eldritch girl nods, seeming pleased. Then let the battle begin. Suddenly, I'm thrust back into the house, but not just one version of it. I exist simultaneously in every iteration of the cursed dwelling across all dimensions. I can see the old ones now, vast cosmic entities of such alien geometry that merely perceiving them threatens to shatter my sanity. They push against the fabric of reality, seeking entry into our dimension. In some timelines, they succeed, and I watch in horror as entire worlds are consumed by their unknowable presence. But I'm not powerless anymore. Drawing on the combined strength of my infinite selves, I begin to push back. I fortify the walls between dimensions, sealing breaches and repelling the invading entities. The battle rages across time and space. In one reality, I use arcane magic to bind an old one into the foundation of the house. In another, I employ futuristic technology to create a quantum barrier against their intrusion. With each small victory, I grow stronger, more adept at wielding the power of the Nexus. But the old ones are relentless. For every breach I seal, they create two more. I watch helplessly as entire timelines are erased from existence, consumed by the encroaching void. The weight of my responsibility threatens to crush me. How long can I keep this up? How many realities must I sacrifice to save the rest? Just when I think all hope is lost, I notice something. In every timeline, in every version of the house, there's a constant, the ancient tree I saw in the mirrored room. I realize it's not just a tree, but a physical manifestation of the Nexus itself, the axis around which all these realities revolve. With this revelation comes an idea, desperate, dangerous, but perhaps our only hope. I begin to focus my energy not on fighting the old ones directly, but on connecting every version of the tree across all dimensions. As I do, I feel the power of the Nexus growing, concentrating into a single point in space and time. The old ones sense what I'm doing and redouble their efforts to break through. The very fabric of reality groans under the strain of their assault. Entire universes blink out of existence as the cosmic conflict reaches its crescendo. In the final moment, as I feel my grasp on the Nexus beginning to slip, I pour every ounce of my being into one last, desperate act. I merge with the tree, becoming one with the focal point of all realities. There's a moment of perfect stillness, a calm at the eye of the storm. Then, with a force that defies description, the concentrated power of the Nexus explodes outward. A shockwave of pure creation ripples across the multiverse, sealing breaches, repairing damaged realities, and pushing the old ones back into the void from whence they came. As the cosmic dust settles, I find myself once again in the original house where my journey began. But I'm fundamentally changed. I exist both as my original self and as the guardian of the Nexus, aware of every timeline, every possibility. The girl with the void face appears one last time, but now I see her true nature, a fragment of my own consciousness, created to guide me towards this moment. It's done, she says, her voice tinged with both sadness and pride. The boundaries are sealed, the old ones repelled. But the battle is never truly over. They will try again, as they always have, as they always will. I nod, understanding the weight of my new existence. And I'll be here to stop them, across every dimension, in every version of this house. The girl smiles, her form beginning to fade. Remember, in an infinite multiverse, there are infinite horrors, but also infinite wonders. Your task is to maintain the balance, to be the guardian of both the light and the dark. As she disappears, I feel the house settling around me. It's still a nexus of supernatural energy, a focal point for the weird and the terrifying. But now, it's also a bastion against greater horrors, a fortress protecting the very fabric of reality. I sit down at my computer and begin to type, chronicling my experiences. I know now that my story will find its way to other versions of myself across dimensions, serving as both a warning and a call to action. For in every reality, there's a version of this house, and a version of me fated to confront the horrors within. To those who may read this, know that reality is far more vast and terrifying than you can imagine. But also know that within you lies the potential to face that terror, to stand against cosmic horrors and emerge victorious. As I finish typing, I feel the familiar shift in the air that signals the arrival of a new inhabitant in one of the infinite versions of this house. Somewhere, another story is beginning, another version of me is about to embark on this terrifying journey. I smile, both excited and apprehensive about what's to come. For I am now both the creator and guardian of this endless cycle of horror and wonder, tasked with maintaining the delicate balance of an infinite multiverse. The cursor blinks on my screen, waiting for the next word, the next story. And in the shadows of the house, something stirs, ready to test the boundaries once again. The eternal dance continues, for in the realm of true unsettling horror stories, there is no end, only new beginning.